Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Anthony Trollope because I've just finished one of his books and completed a cycle of Trollope's, and I'm going to solicit your help in deciding which one I'm going to read next. So the one I've just finished, and I'll talk about it, I'll take you through all that where I'm at so far, but I've just finished The Duke's Children, which is the last of the Palliser novels, and I'll review that in a second. I just want to tell you about my journey with Trollope so far, which starts only 8 years ago. In 2016, I read my first ever Trollope, which was The Warden. I think I've said before, one of the reasons why I like reading Victorian literature. There's no reason for me not to read Trollope, except there was a BBC TV series of the Barchester Chronicles in the late 70s maybe, which I think my mum watched, and maybe she read one of them. And so Trollope I categorized as very mumsy and didn't read him for years until I worked out as 8 years ago when I was in my late 40s that there was no reason not to do that. And so 2016 I bought my first, and it's such a great entry point. The Warden is his fourth novel according to the Wikipedia bibliography, and then the ordering of the books that I'll show you in a second. One of these editions has the list of 53 published works by Trollope in the publication order. So this is the fourth one, back in 1855, and The Duke's Children, I think, is the 43rd of 53, written in 1880. So I'll take through all these. Warden is a great entry level. Recommend to everyone. I've lent this to other people because the book is just about 200 pages, and so if you less than 200 pages in this edition. So if you have any love of Victorian literature, or you want to see maybe if you could enjoy some kind of Victorian literature, and the story is gentle, and love The Warden, and it's a perfect gateway was for me. And so I decided, the reason I started with The Warden was I decided I was going to read the Barchester Chronicles, which is 6 books, and so after The Warden I read Barchester Towers, and this is a TV tie edition. That is Nigel Hawthorne and Donald Pleasance in that BBC series that I mentioned before. And on the back you have Geraldine McEwen and Clive Swift, who is Hyacinth Bucket's husband. Anyway, Barchester Chronicles, also great. After that, so already 2 different editions. This is Penguin English Library, and then I got this TV tie-in edition, both published by Penguin. And then I got this, the first of this series, which is the Penguin Trollope series, and numbered number 7. So this is the third of the Barchester Chronicles. This is Dr. Thorne, sorry. And they all come like this, with this orange, but all the ones in this edition, orange with a picture of Trollope on the front. So nothing, everyone else, this is thing going on in the book or references, but this is all the Penguin Trollope series, and they were numbered on the spine, irritatingly in my opinion, with the chronological publication order. So this is the 7th book that Trollope published, but the 3rd in the Barchester Chronicles. Anyway, the useful thing about this edition, which is the basic Penguin Classics edition, this does not have any notes at the back. And does it have an introduction? No. Interesting. So unlike the Penguin Classics, and I've got a few of those, there's no introduction to this and no notes at the back. I don't know why they would do it like that, but okay. This was also great, but this is what this has got in the back is the list, the Penguin Trollope, the list of all the books published in this edition, and a number from 1 to 53 in publication order from 1847 with the McDermotts of Ballycloran, and up to number 53, an autobiography, which is Trollope's autobiography. So that was the 3rd one. Then we've got Family Parsonage, which is, this is my preferred edition, even when they fade terribly. This is supposed to be red across the top. But this is the Penguin Classics that I grew up with. Sometimes they are cream around their edges, sometimes they're black around the edges with the picture in, sometimes the picture is at full bleed. I don't know how they chose. Sometimes, if the spine's wide enough, and you'll see later on, got examples, the spine's wide enough, they stick a little picture on the side as well. And these are super, these editions, and this has got an introduction. It's got some notes at the back. Very handy. That was Family Parsonage. That's the 4th of the Barchester Chronicles. So one second. I wanted to tell you when I read all these. So I bought The Warden in 2016, Barchester Chronicles in 2016, Dr. Thorne 2016. But according to Goodreads, I've been reading them. So if I've read 12 so that the 6 Barchester novels and the 6 Palliser novels in about 8 years, so 1.5 a year. So I'm reading 3 every 2 years at the moment, which it seems fair enough. There's no rules here. Framley Parsonage is another lovely Penguin Classics. Then The Small House at Allington is the 5th in the Barchester Chronicles. It's starting to get a bit chunky from the sub 200 pages for the Warden. This book is over 600, under 700 pages, and I think they get bigger than that even. Small House Allington, love that. And then the last of the Barchester Chronicles is cleverly called The Last Chronicle of Barset, which I picked up in 2017 and read a couple of years after that. And this one goes almost the full 850 pages, over 850 pages. So that was the last of the Barchester Chronicles, but there were characters that appear in the Barchester Chronicles, which then crossed over to another loose series. And these are collectively, they're called the Barchester Chronicles because there are some characters that, but each one tells its own story, and then sometimes someone who is the main character in one part of the story shows up somewhere else as a peripheral character, but each one has its own particular focus, but they're linked, and I'm a fan of that, and so it made sense for me to read them one after the other as a series. And after that I decided I would read the Palliser novels, which I maybe even more loosely linked, except one of the characters that kind of flows all the way through the Palliser novels and gives them their name, Palliser, is a chap called Plantagenet Palliser, who joined the Barsetshire, the Barchester Chronicles, the Barsetshire Chronicles, of which the Barchester Chronicles is one. Plantagenet Palliser is the nephew of the Duke of Omnium, who is one of Britain's wealthiest people, and a duke to boot, so revered, and a lot of Trollope is talking about the aristocracy and this sort of old-fashioned reverence for class, and how much importance is placed upon knowing your place in society, and how that influences how you must behave, and the way people have to address you, and your responsibilities, both to the people who live on the land that you own, and the public, and to your children and your heirs, and your government, which plays a big part in Palliser. So the Palliser novels are named after Plantagenet Palliser, who at some point, I don't quite remember when, maybe I don't know in which book it happens, but the Duke of Omnium that we know from the Barsetshire Chronicles dies, and Plantagenet Palliser, for whom the Palliser novels are loosely named, I'm not sure Trollope ever gave him that name, so I think this is a name attributed by scholars for this loose connection. Plantagenet Palliser becomes the new Duke of Omnium. He also is very involved in government, so over time he rises through government. I think he's the Chancellor of the Exchequer at one point, and even becomes the Prime Minister. And there is a book called The Prime Minister. It's the second in the series. 1 second, let's get through. The 5th in the Palliser books. So the first one, Can You Forgive Her, tells a story of, and this is a big one, right? So we start the Palliser novels with over 800 pages, and this tells the story of Glencora, the lovely, lovely Lady Cora, who eventually becomes the wife of Plantagenet Palliser, and eventually becomes the Duchess of Omnium. And this is a story of her first potentially life-damaging romance, where she falls for a bad boy, and has to be extricated from a potentially damaging marriage. And wonderful, and Glencora is. I have a very soft spot for Phineas Finn and his later wife, but Lady Glencora is one of the loveliest. But this isn't necessarily her story. That's a sort of side story that goes on in here, I believe, because this is really the story of Alice Vavasor, who was also kind of likes a bad boy. Anyway, Can You Forgive It is the first of this, and throughout the time I was reading this, I can't get the Pet Shop Boys song out of my head, which is called Can You Forgive It? Anyway, first the Palliser novels, followed by Phineas Finn. Terrific, and this I've got a rather more beaten up, a full bleed cover, rather more beaten up Penguin English Library edition, as opposed to my favourite one of these. Terrific, love Phineas Finn, gets up all sorts of mischief, He wants to become a politician. In those days, being a member of the British Parliament was an unpaid job. So to become elected and then to serve in Parliament was tough for someone without the means to support himself. And this is the story of the rise and fall of Phineas Finn, followed by the Eustace Diamonds, which is terrific. Sort of take a sidestep and where we get a sort of Beck Sharp type character who is gets into all sorts of trouble and involving some diamonds which she believes belong to her and her husband's family believe should be returned. Terrific. I think that's the most egregious anti-Semitism I found probably in this, but the book's terrific. Then we come back to Phineas. So we had the rise and fall of Phineas Finn in Phineas Finn, and we get Phineas Redux. So I'm back now to this Penguin Trollope edition, which I quite like again. So the covers doesn't give you anything, it's just got Trollope. But they were neat, and they tend not to have been... Every single one of these books I bought secondhand somewhere, either on eBay or in a secondhand store, so you can pick them up fairly cheaply. And I actually, if I go looking, I would probably look for these just as much as these editions, because these tend to be not widely read, and so I get them quite clean. But again, we're talking how many pages of this? This is this weird thing in these editions. I can't understand this. So in this edition, I'm not sure if this is how they were originally published, but it goes up to chapter whatever it is, which is up to chapter 41. So the first 40 chapters covers 440 pages. And then at chapter 41, it starts numbering again from 1. So 440 pages plus another 430 pages. That's nearly 900 pages, 874 pages according to this. But that was Phineas Redux, which we love to see a character come back. And after we saw sort of Phineas shuffled off to obscurity at the end of Phineas Finn, and he comes back big time and has his own romance, a more successful romance this time in Phineas Redux. Love that. And then the Prime Minister is focused on Plantagenet Palliser, the former Plantagenet Palliser, who becomes the Duke of Omnium, and his appointment as Prime Minister, leading Parliament, and then a lot of stuff about British politics in the 19th century, which if you're not into can be a little disappointing or a little long. I wasn't interested, but I love all the intrigue and the way they talk about it, and the importance of giving speeches in Parliament and putting yourself forward, and the value placed on men who are able to articulate and talk in complete thoughts in a way that I'm clearly not. Anyway, Prime Minister is great, the fifth, and then that leads it to the one I've just read, the last in the Palliser series, which was actually a little shorter. So The Duke's Children in this edition, which I have, you will have noticed, Oxford World's Classic. Everything, all the other 11 are Penguin Classics or Penguin Modern Library or the Penguin Trollopes, and this is the World's Classic. I bought this last year in a secondhand store in Edinburgh when I was kind of on a book buying ban, and I saw it and I just said, okay, I'm going to get it. And it took me 9 months to get round to reading it. Fantastic end, sort of melancholy end to the series, but as I say, a bit short. This was about 650 pages, or this 630 pages. And this starts with the Lady Glencora, the Duchess of Omnium, has died. And the Duke of Omnium, Plantagenet Palliser, the current Duke of Omnium, the man who gives his name to this series of books, is at a loss. He's lost his support, his life mate. He's not a man given to huge emotional success. He's a man who has honoured his place in society and takes very seriously his status as a duke, his former status as Prime Minister of Great Britain, and now is reduced and saddened and miserable. And this, as the title suggests, is about his 3 children. There is the heir, who is just known as Silverbridge. He also, his real name is Plantagenet Palliser, also named for his father, but he's just known as Lord Silverbridge because he is due to inheritance. Silverbridge is one of the titles that the estate of the Duke of Omnium controls. There's another son, Gerald, who we don't see much of. He's off in first Cambridge and then Oxford because he gets thrown out of Cambridge. And then Lady Mary, his daughter. So he has 2 sons and a daughter, which I could relate to. And this is a book about a man who is not fully in touch with his emotional side, trying to deal with his three unruly children as they come of age, without having the wherewithal to give them decent advice or to empathize with them, and specifically in the case of who they will marry, which is of importance to the aristocracy, that you marry someone who is of a worthy family, and the different demands placed on the heir, Lord Silverbridge, who will eventually become the Duke of Omnium when this Duke of Omnium dies, and so he has a little more freedom about who he chooses to marry, although she should be of good stock, good breeding, a good family, but she doesn't have to have money, is the point. Duke of Omnium is fabulously wealthy, and there are things that happen in this book which even today would make him fabulously wealthy. Sums of money are lost in horse racing. There's a talk of £70,000 being lost, and the Duke writes a check. This is 150 years, nearly 200 years ago. The Duke writes a check for £70,000 to cover the gambling losses of his son without skipping a beat. And considers that, when the son feels so sick that he's lost this money and swears he'll never have anything to do with horse racing again. And the Duke says, well, in that case, it was worthwhile. Now, there are not many people who can write off £70,000 today in today's money. I can't imagine what that was worth back then. Anyway, so his sons, the Lord Silverbridge, the oldest one, who's wasting time on hunting and horse racing and gambling, but really wants to be a good person, hates the fact that he's disappointing his father. You have Gerald, who's the running off and he's not really a big part, and Lady Mary. Now, the Lady Mary is also expected to marry well into a family of good standing, but Lady Mary, coming from money, cannot possibly, surely, marry someone with no money, because that would be somebody who's a gold digger trying to marry in and get hold of, because in this time, whatever money a wife has automatically becomes the husband's when you get married. So there's all this kind of repressed, can you marry who you love? What does it mean if you say you love someone, your entire reputation in life could be ruined because you can never be fit for any other one, an appropriate suitor that comes along later. All this is going on, and the poor, emotionally strangled Duke of Omnium is really unable to deal with what his children are getting up to. He knows what he doesn't approve of, and his stubborn children are pushing him to the brink of his own sanity, all in the immediate aftermath of the death of his wife. Just terrific stuff. And astonishingly, so the children are hopeless. Lord Silverbridge is wet, and all he hates the fact that he disappoints his father, but he can't stop himself being an absolute twit. And Lady Mary, who has fallen in love with somebody, spoilers, happens very early, is in love with somebody who has no money, and so the Duke forbids the marriage, and she stubbornly says, well, then I'm just going to be unhappy and single. I'm going to stick around you and moan and cry all the time. And she's also miserable and wet and has no life experience at all, and is absolutely hopeless. And these two relationships, Lord Silverbridge, the eldest son and heir, gets mixed up or involved with one and then another woman, and he has to extricate himself from one and declare his love for someone else unsuitable. But the first one he extricates himself from was more suitable, but then she didn't really love him, but she was only marrying him because even though she has the right pedigree, the right heritage, she has no money, so she knows she needs to marry well, and instead he falls in love with someone who's unsuitable. And these two relationships at the heart of this that we're supposed to root for involve the least interesting characters in the whole book, and yet somehow I'm there for it. The jilted fiancée, i.e. the woman who has a good family name but no money, who Silverbridge is originally attached to, is far more interesting, has far more depth and character built than the other flibbity-gibbet girls, who they're not airheads, but they just don't have much to speak for them. And yet somehow I'm rooting for these two marriages, and I'm rooting for this book to come together, and for these young, beautiful people to have to live the lives they dreamt of, and to be able to love the people they choose to love, and for the Duke of Omnium to learn to be less stick up your butt. And I can't. explain why I fell for this, but I kind of did, just as I've fallen for everything else Trollope has done. These are Victorian romances, beautifully written, lots of interesting side things. I've learned so much about fox hunting, which I have no interest in, but the way it is all the way through, there have been scenes of fox hunting, and they are as thrilling as any Quidditch match, as anything. I remember there's a scene in, I think, Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward, where they're running through the forest and the excitement and this, and when these men and women are on their horses pounding over fences and jumping over ditches and chasing a fox. Again, I have no interest in fox hunting, and I condemn anyone who thinks it's a sport, and yet he writes it so excitingly, and it's just a side thing, and the speeches in Parliament are so exciting. Anyway, I loved The Duke's Children. I have loved my time with both the Barsetshire Chronicles and the Palliser novels, and now I turn to you with a question. What Trollope should I read next? Let's have a look at some of the options, and these don't have to be all the options, so if you have others, please suggest them. So I was kind of thinking that having completed these two sextets, loose sextets, as I say, I don't think Trollope was particularly interested in having them grouped this way. But I thought I might read his last book. And there are other authors that I read them in publication order. I'm already not reading Trollope in publication order, so I think I can jump around. But I thought I might read next his autobiography. Let me know if you've read it and if you think it's a good way. And then I would still go back and read some of the other novels. I think some of them are probably better received than others. But that's one possible option, that I would read an autobiography by Anthony Trollope next. And the other two big titles that I think I want to get to, probably before some of the lesser known titles, are, where is it? The Way We Live Now, I think, is that one of them? I can't even see the names. Hold on one second. Pausing. Sorry, I found that the two. For some reason, I thought The Way We Live Now was an earlier novel. It's from 1875. It's his 36th one, so it came out just before the year before the Prime Minister. The Way We Live Now, I think, is another option. So an autobiography, The Way We Live Now, and He Knew He Was Right, which is from 1869, a little bit earlier. So I'd love that. Those are the three that I have in mind. But if you think there's another one, if you think I should start at the beginning and read his early novels, or you think I should just read the later novels, or you think there's a golden period in the middle that you think I should mine more deeply, please let me know where to go after Barsetshire, after the Palliser. What should my next Trollope be? I look forward to hearing your suggestions. Take care. God bless. Bye.